Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be reviewing Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, which serves as a direct sequel to Ghostbusters Afterlife, and this time moves the story away from the country, rural, enclosed community setting in Oklahoma back to the firehouse and the more populated city of New York. The film follows Ghostbusters, new and old, teaming up to stop a evil spirit from basically unleashing all the ghosts across the city and bringing a new ice age to people's front doors. Now, I have never seen a Ghostbusters film up until this year. It was just one of those franchises that was just never introduced to me as a kid. So I didn't really have any of the nostalgia or connection with the characters when I started watching them from the beginning last month. And I've got to say, personally for me, just objectively speaking, this is one of the most overhyped franchises of all time. There is genuinely not a single Ghostbusters film that I would say is a legitimately great film. I can absolutely see why, back in the 80s, Ghostbusters hit the kind of acclaim that it got. It was very weird and wacky, provided a really interesting blend of comedy, supernatural and horror. A lot of the characters were very deadpan and eccentric misfits all banded together. But particularly with the original, I'd say that the plot is a bit all over the place. The characters aren't particularly well fleshed out, and it is more the concept and that tone of fun that kind of carries you through the film. Same with Ghostbusters Afterlife. I really enjoyed the first half of Ghostbusters Afterlife, introducing us to new characters. It was a slow burn setup, but I actually thought the characters were quite fun, really well played by the actors. It was also quite funny as well. I actually thought it was one of those blockbusters where the comedy somewhat worked. Shock horror. And it did feel like it was taking its time to be a bit more character driven and reintroduced Ghostbusters to a new generation of fans. And then the second half of Afterlife fell a bit flat for me. It was just classic problem solving, plot heavy stuff, and the nostalgia bait at the end bringing the OG Ghostbusters back in a way that really didn't involve them doing much. Didn't hit me with any kind of emotional resonance. Although for people who hadn't seen these characters on the big screen for 2 decades or whatever, I guess it was probably a bit of a bigger deal. So that brings us to Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, which is getting slated in the reviews for being overstuffed, juggling too many characters, too many plot threads that need attention to, spreading itself too thin. And for me, it's no better or worse than any of the other Ghostbusters films. It's absolutely not a great film, but then in my opinion, none of the others are either. So comparatively, I'd say it's pretty much hitting the same standard as all the other films in this franchise. It absolutely does spread itself too thin, but in my opinion, that's because this film attempts to do something which none of the other films have, which is world building. This film attempts to kind of contextualize who the Ghostbusters are in society and pay a bit more attention to that, the purpose they serve, the setbacks they face. And I was kind of on board with that because once you've seen these guys fight one ghost, you've seen them fight them all. And that's especially what I felt watching them all in such quick succession. So having a lot of the OG characters off doing separate things within the supernatural world felt quite interesting. The new characters settling into the new mantle of Ghostbusters felt interesting, and it felt like it was integrating the new and the old cast a lot stronger than Afterlife was, with the exception of Bill Murray, who arguably the main character of the original Ghostbusters, feels like he comes in and out at very random points in this film with no kind of through line. The other OG Ghostbusters feel like they have a traceable arc and it makes sense when they do pop up. Bill Murray just seems to drift in and out of the narrative as he pleases. So he was the only one whose place didn't feel entirely warranted at times. In terms of new additions, we've got 2 main ones. We've got James Acaster sort of filling the Egon Spengler role, I guess, of being a nerdy, slightly offbeat, humorous character. He was fine, wasn't particularly memorable, didn't particularly do much. And then you've got Kamal Nanjiani, who plays this kind of deadbeat character who's drifting through life, selling his nan's wares to make a bit of quick cash, and hasn't really found his purpose and calling. And I actually found his character quite fun. I think he does that humour really well. The problem is the classic, the film splits off into teams doing different things to contribute to the main outcome, and that's when the pace gets a bit disrupted. The actual problem solving becomes a bit mundane and tedious. It doesn't really amount to much in terms of interesting narrative finds or interesting, engaging set pieces, delaying the inevitable final Ghostbusters battle sort of thing. Speaking of which, they also really need to find a better way to do these, because in all of the films, the final battle with the ghost comes down to a line of people with these proton packs stood still shooting a laser and pulling faces to make it look like it's straining them. that is not visually engaging after the first time. They've got to try and find creative and new ways to take on these ghosts. Don't lose the proton packs because they're the classic ghost busting weapon. But just, you know, let's have a bit more dynamic movement in there rather than just all our characters lined up together. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is okay. If you enjoyed Afterlife, if you enjoyed the original, you will enjoy this. Like, if you are a fan of this franchise, you will enjoy Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. It is objectively not a great film. It's throwing in too many new characters. It's splitting off established characters on their own little mini arcs, which don't all necessarily build with the same momentum. The potential scale for this film, relocating to a city and with this kind of Ice Age threatening ghost, could have been huge, but the film feels like it never really exploits the possibility of that scale. It's fun at times, it's nostalgic at times, it's boring at times, it's unengaging at times. It's really a mixed bag, and I think depending on your history with this franchise will determine your relationship with this particular installment. So if you have seen it, guys, drop a comment below and do let me know your thoughts. Please also consider liking and subscribing to the channel. That's always a huge help for me. And in the meantime, I'll see you for the next vid.